All right, my darlings, today we're going to do lesson 514, and the title of that lesson is Water and Nitrogen Cycles. Abiotic factors, such as water and nitrogen, recycle through complex mechanisms on Earth. Do you realize that the water you drink was somehow part of something else in this world? Was it once inside the cells of a pig or a fungus? The nitrogen atoms in your DNA, have they only been used in your body? More likely they were once part of some dinosaur, then maybe an insect, and then maybe a tree before they found their way into you in the recycling process that characterizes many of the abiotic factors of ecosystems. Many substances used by living things cycle on Earth. It's a hot summer day and nothing seems more refreshing than a drink of water. You open the water bottle or the drinking fountain tap with the false sense of security that the water has not been used by anyone or anything before. Surprise! Whether it's sealed in an expensive bottle with a colorful mountain river scene on the label or poured from the kitchen tap, it's used water. The water molecules you're drinking may have once been part of a nearby stream, a cloud, a plant, or even part of your own body. Maybe they've been part of all those things. They've been used and recycled just like the air molecules you're breathing, and like the carbon and nitrogen in the very structure of all your cells. Without the natural recycling of abiotic materials, life on Earth could not be. Your entire body and everything it uses have been used before and will be used again. The water cycle stores and moves water around between land, air, and living things. Water in the atmosphere exists mainly as water vapor. Water vapor moves from oceans and surface waters through evaporation. The oceans are the largest reservoir of water on Earth. Water near the poles and higher elevations freezes to form snow, glaciers, and sea ice. Approximately 2% of all water is in the form of ice glaciers and icebergs. Groundwater is the second largest freshwater reservoir on Earth. Water percolates through the surface to enter aquifers. All living things contain water in their cells. During respiration and transpiration, living things give off water. Respiration is the process in which an organism exchanges gases with its environment, and transpiration is the process by which a plant loses water to the atmosphere through the surface of its leaves. Animals exhale water vapor into the air during respiration. Plant cells release water to outside surfaces during transpiration. That moisture often appears as dew. Moisture from both sources evaporates to contribute to the water content of the atmosphere. Water evaporates from oceans and other water sources into the atmosphere. Wherever it's found, in whatever state, the surface expanses of the world's water are warmed by beams of sunlight, causing evaporation, which is the process by which water changes to water vapor. Water molecules then condense into water droplets by clinging to dust or other small particles suspended in the atmosphere, forming clouds. Water moves from the atmosphere to the Earth in many forms of precipitation. Precipitation is defined as water moving from the atmosphere to the surface of the Earth. Snow, rain, hail, and sleet are all forms of precipitation. Almost no water enters or exits the Earth's system. However, the water on the Earth does change forms, moving from one reservoir to another, such as from the oceans to the atmosphere. Water reservoirs and the processes that move water between reservoirs make up the water cycle. Water that moves over land into the oceans is runoff. Runoff may flow directly into the oceans, or it may flow into other water bodies such as ponds, lakes, and rivers, which then drain into the oceans. Water in the atmosphere exists primarily as water vapor, which is a gas. However, the water in clouds is in the form of tiny liquid water droplets. Living things, especially plants, give off water vapor during respiration and transpiration. When animals breathe out, they give off water vapor. During transpiration, water vapor passes out of tiny pores in plant leaves. All living things contain water in their cells. Without water, organisms on Earth could not survive. Only a tiny fraction of Earth's water is surface water. Surface water includes lakes, rivers, ponds, swamps, and streams. Water moves from Earth's surface into the ground through percolation. Percolation is the primary way that water enters aquifers, which are underground rock bodies that store water. Groundwater is the second largest freshwater reservoir on Earth. Groundwater is water that is located below Earth's surface, stored in layers of rock. Water moves from oceans and surface waters into the atmosphere through evaporation. The main source of energy for evaporation is sunlight. Water moves from the atmosphere to Earth's surface through precipitation. Most precipitation falls on the oceans. The oceans are the largest water reservoirs on Earth. About 97% of the water in the Earth's system is located in the oceans. Approximately 2% of all water in the Earth's system is located in ice in glaciers and icebergs. This ice makes up the largest freshwater reservoir on Earth. Liquid water turns into ice during the process of freezing. Water near the poles and at higher elevations freezes to form snow, glaciers, and sea ice. Nitrogen, most of which is found in the atmosphere, cycles between various reservoirs. Nitrogen, along with oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen, all of which make up approximately 96% of the living matter in your body, is absolutely essential for life. Nitrogen gas exists in a seemingly inexhaustible supply. It makes up 78% of the Earth's atmosphere. Unfortunately, nitrogen gas in the atmosphere is not in a form that is usable by living things, and therefore must be converted to other more usable forms. During the nitrogen cycle, the chemical forms of nitrogen change. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria convert nitrogen gas into ammonia and nitrates. Despite being the majority molecule in the atmosphere, nitrogen gas cannot be used directly by living things. But all organisms need nitrogen to live, so how do living things get it? In root nodules of certain plants, bacteria convert nitrogen gas into ammonia and nitrates, chemical substances in which nitrogen is one of the atoms. The plants then use these nitrogen substances. Other organisms eat the plants, and the nitrogen substances move up the food chain from there. The nodule growths on the roots of plants might look like some disease or infection, but this symbiotic relationship between bacteria and a plant give organisms ready access to the types of nitrogen compounds that they need. Denitrifying bacteria convert nitrates back into nitrogen gas. Scientists love to study and use bacteria. Bacteria breaks down garbage, digests food in your small intestine, and converts nitrogen gas into nitrates and ammonia that you can use. Other bacteria convert those nitrates and ammonia back into nitrogen gas through the process of denitrification. Found where oxygen is lacking, denitrifying bacteria use nitrogen compounds instead of oxygen for their processes of respiration. In doing so, they convert excess ammonia and nitrates back into the nitrogen gas, where the cycle begins anew. Unwittingly, every action by every living thing keeps substances on Earth cycling and cycling. Runoff from the water cycle carries nitrogen compounds into the oceans. When colonial Americans cut down forests to make farms, they unknowingly began a process that depleted the soil of the nutrients it contained. Nitrogen compounds used by living things dissolve easily in water. If the nitrogen compounds in soil have not yet made it into a life form and water comes along, the nitrogen compounds get washed away, often eventually into an ocean. Trees and forest plants act as barriers to runoff, slowing and reducing water flow and in turn protecting the soil. When those trees and plants are removed, the soil and its nutrients are easily washed away. Nitrogen on Earth is continuously moving between different reservoirs. The reservoirs of nitrogen and the processes that cause nitrogen to move between them make up the nitrogen cycle. The atmosphere is the largest nitrogen reservoir on Earth. Almost all nitrogen in the atmosphere is in the form of nitrogen gas. Some kinds of soil bacteria, called denitrifying bacteria, convert nitrate into nitrogen gas. This nitrogen gas moves from the soil back into the atmosphere. Although all living things require nitrogen to survive, most cannot use nitrogen gas directly from the atmosphere. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria can convert nitrogen gas into other compounds, such as ammonia and nitrates that plants can use. Animals obtain usable nitrogen by eating plants or other organisms. When organisms decay, the nitrogen in their body returns to the soil. Human activities, such as fertilizer production and the burning of fossil fuels, can change the amount of nitrates and other nitrogen compounds in Earth's system. In fact, humans' actions have nearly doubled the amount of atmospheric nitrogen converted into ammonia and nitrate. This increase has a significant impact on the global nitrogen cycle. Ammonia, nitrates, and other nitrogen compounds dissolve easily in rainwater. Runoff can carry these compounds into the ocean. Marine organisms also rely on nitrogen-fixing bacteria to convert atmospheric nitrogen gas into ammonia and nitrate. Phytoplankton and other producers in the oceans can use these nitrogen compounds. Marine animals obtain nitrogen by feeding on other organisms. Decomposers also help mobilize nitrogen in marine ecosystems. Denitrifying bacteria convert nitrate into nitrogen gas, which flows back into the atmosphere. Water and nitrogen cycle between the atmosphere, the earth, and living things. The balance of necessary substances, such as water and nitrogen, are maintained through complex cycling systems. The water cycle continuously moves and stores water between the atmosphere, the earth, and living things. Water enters the atmosphere through evaporation, respiration, and transpiration. It comes back to the earth in the form of precipitation. Nitrogen in the atmosphere cannot be used directly by living things. Certain nitrogen-fixing bacteria chemically convert nitrogen gas into forms of nitrogen that plants and other living things can use. Both the water cycle and the nitrogen cycle have more than one pathway through which these substances can travel.